Hello, my name is Epic Bowl, and I sometimes go by the name of Simon. Well, that's actually my name. And this is a thoughts video. This is my thoughts on a wonderful game, one of my personal favorites called Concordia. You'll notice by the box artwork that is terrible. But thankfully that only extends to the box artwork. The actual game itself is actually quite nice to look at and isn't overly garish or contain too many horrible things. Now, I should preface this by saying this is not a review. No, this is me giving my thoughts. So this is more for if you have played the game or if you maybe have seen the game, done a review on someone else's site and thinking, well, is it really the game for me? And let me tell you firstly, this is such a good game. This is basically, I want to say, a more deluxe version of Catan. This is a game that has a bit more strategic depth, it's a bit more clever than Monopoly, and yet it has so much going for it. So much that it does in a clever and simple way. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy, no, by no stretch of the imagination is it easy, especially if you're playing with 4 other people who are all trying to vie for control over the greater Roman Empire. No, absolutely not. You see, you're constantly going to be taking your turns thinking out what's the best route to go on, and your friends are going to somehow stuff it up. Not because they're malicious, no, not because they're going for you. It's just because you kind of got in their way. Now, one of the great things is the rulebook is simple. There is a 2-page rulebook that is flimsy at best, but has every single rule in it. And then you have a lovely little book that has all the things about Rome and what Dacia and Helios is and what Minerva, the goddess, is and what Concordia is. Apparently Concordia is a goddess of harmony and patron of unity for the citizens of Rome. Anyway, it's just a nice thing that the designer kind of added in, because I think a lot of designers kind of think, well, how could I make a game and then let me add a theme on top of it, or at least the publishers will add a theme afterwards. In this case, it feels like the designer actually went out, did a bit of research, and then was like, you know what, I can make a really cool game out of this. And it's not to say that this theme hasn't been done before. No, trading in the Mediterranean has been done a lot of times, but this is not a complicated game. You see, what's great is you have a hand of cards. And these cards are essentially going to be your actions on your turn. You can, say, move people around, playing the architect, and then build cities. You can, say, trade goods that you have in your warehouse and get money, which is great. You can prefect and tell a region that you hate to produce for you, or tell a region that has like 3 of your houses in to produce goods for you. That's great. Everything you do, every card you play is always going to give you something nice. And that's one of the first things I love about this game is every action you do rewards you. It's not a case where you take 3 actions to move a worker here, and then you have to do this, and then does the reward hit you. In this case, every single turn or every single card you play is going to get you something out of it. For example, the Senator, which is probably one of the best cards in the game because it allows you to buy new cards, which you can see up at the top there. That allows you to get new cards, which can then be played in the next turn. And the great thing about that is even the thing of the Tribune, which has you take back your cards after they've been used. This actually gets you money, depending on how efficient you are. So if you manage to play your whole hand of cards, you can get like 7 money, which is enough to buy you some silk in the game. The next thing is just the pacing of the game is actually quite relaxing. You never feel like you're at the beginning of the game. You never feel like you're at the end game. The game is kind of a middle ground because every action you do is going to be taken slowly and methodically until one of your friends ends up taking over one of your spots. This as you're about to build there, and all of a sudden that's now costing you double. It's a race, but it's a clever race. You see, what happens is at the beginning of the game, you get given a few goods in your warehouse, which is like some wheat, some stone, some wine, which has probably been drunk already, and some silk. Great, but you need those to build houses, because that's going to allow you to get more silk, and more wine, much more wine. And then, you're going to spend it all gain houses, and those houses are going to produce for you. And then you're going to be playing your cards. But what's great is the board is always random. So your houses will change. You're never going to be going for the same place constantly. You're given these little city tokens, which would be like, okay, well, this place produces brick, this place produces wheat. So I might, for one game, want to go a heavy silk strategy and dominate all the silk regions, or I might just want to try and go for wheat and iron and just try and get a lot of people on the board, because people are great too. So often in games, workers tend to clog up boards, and in this case, it's no different. You're constantly noticing people get dropped off in the middle of roads, only to find out that you can't get to them. Or you somehow placed your person inappropriately, so now your boat's in the corner of the map, and you're trying to colonize places which are all the way on the other side. The game has so many clever choices it's making for you, so many clever things it's asking you to kind of balance, but it's never hard. This game is not a hard game. I mean, I've taught this to completely new people, and they have gotten it. The one downside, I will say, this is the one thing I dislike about the game, well, not dislike, it's the one thing I find an issue with, and it's mostly when teaching new players, is that in order to score the game, in order to become victor at the game, you have to score victory points. Hey, that's a clever new idea. Well, the trouble is, your victory points are all on cards here. You get a nice handy reference sheet, which tells you, okay, well, for every 10 gold I have at the end of the game, I'll get 1 victory point. For every city that I have that's not a big city, I'll get 1 victory point. But you see, what happens is, the more cards you have, the more times you can gain those victory points. So for example, if I have 4 Jupiter cards, I will score Jupiter 4 times. The trouble is, people don't really understand it until they see it happen, and by that stage the game is over and you probably will have won. It's very hard to play this game badly, in a sense, if you are a person that plays this a lot, so trying to get new players into the game can sometimes be a bit difficult. Also, players don't really value cards as highly as someone who's played it multiple times. Especially when you're buying cards, you almost want to be buying 2 cards every single time, because that's the most efficient you can possibly be. But that's really going to be the case. Firstly, because you're constantly waiting for your friend to buy that card, so then you can get that card for cheap. That never happens. But it's also, people don't really, again, see the point of the cards, because it's like, well, I have all the cards in my hand, why would I need to get more cards? And often they don't understand that, because all the cards that you can buy tend to be just better cards, tend to be more powerful cards. Another great thing about the game is it can play up to 5 players on different maps. You see, in the base game you get, well, 1 map, but 1 game board, but it has 2 maps, 1 for either side, and the one map plays great with 4 to 5 players. The other map is a great, more crunchier 3 to 4 players. It's a lot more tight, so you have your time fighting over various regions. And the game even comes with an expansion, which has probably the worst artwork I have ever seen. These people look miserable. But it does add, again, a cool resource. It adds salt, which for some reason the Romans called salsa. I don't know if that relates to anything. And this is a wild resource, and to be fair, the game actually doesn't need it. The game actually plays perfectly fine without it, but it has a nice expansion to it, and it comes with a new board which opens up various other possibilities for you. The one board might be more dominated by roads, and the other board might be more dominated by water regions. The game has so many clever little nuances going for it, and it surprises me because the rules are so simple. All the rules are on the cards in front of a person, and it makes teaching the game a breeze, because you just say, well, okay, this card does what? The architect allows you to move your colonist, and the colonist can move equal to the number of people you have on the board, and then you can build, and the building costs a list on the other card, which is, okay, well, if I want to build in a wheat city, it's going to cost me 1 brick, 1 wheat, and 2 gold. And if someone else is there, it's going to cost you twice that amount. And that's it. I already explained one of the possible, 7 cards in the game, and that's it. But it's, again, a very clever thing the designer has managed to do, which is take what would be a really complicated, or at least a lot of Mediterranean games where you trade stuff tend to be almost overwhelmingly European, but this isn't. This is a really, almost a gateway to trading in the Mediterranean, but it's not difficult. It's not complicated at all. Yet I can tell you now the amount of times I've sat there scratching my head thinking of the best possible play and be like, yes, I can, okay, oh, yes, that feels, And there's nothing greater than having a whole full up warehouse full of stuff, full of silk and wine, moving your people around and then all going, wah, as you basically drop 4 cities down. And again, because of the way the scoring is, you never know who's going to win the game. I will say that the scoring is kind of a bit lackluster in that sense, and a lot of European designs tend to be that. Where it's kind of like, well, did you win? I don't know. Did you just get one card better than me? Did I do worse than you? It feels like I did the same thing as you did. And that's a bit of a letdown, but again, the game itself is so rewarding to play as you play through it that it really doesn't need to have an overly complicated scoring system. For me, Concordia is a sublime, easy to learn, but has so much depth to it for a game. This is a game I almost always want to play because everything feels good. It looks nice, not the box art, but the actual game looks nice. Everything you do is rewarding, and you're constantly looking at other players thinking, well, what the hell are they going to do? One other small thing is just, even though a lot of these kind of Euro games tend to have no player interaction, there's actually quite a lot here because firstly, players are going to block you, players are going to take over areas that you don't want. But then, whenever you produce in a region, if your if your opponent has a city there, they get that resource whenever you produce. So it's a bonus to them. And then finally, you just have the diplomat. And the diplomat's a very simple card, which says, copy the top card of your opponent. So I'm waiting for my opponent to play one of his really good cards that he might have got from the diplomat, so I can copy him. And again, that's just a small, very small design choice, but it adds so much player interactivity because you're constantly looking at your friends, thinking, what the hell are they going to do? I can't strongly recommend Concordia enough. This is a solid 9 out of 10 for me. It has wonderful design. It's simple, it's easy, and I can't stress that enough. But there is so much depth to the game. And hey, if you like this game, there's an expansion for it, which adds a whole bunch of other elements to the game. There's additional maps. I think there's about 3 map packs now that you can buy, and just those just change up the game in a slight nuanced way, but still adds a lot of variability to it. And again, it's just nice. It's nice to have wooden pieces like building a house down. It's nice. It invokes Monopoly, but it's not bad. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this first thoughts video in a sense. I will be doing more of them. It's covering some of the games I like and maybe covering some of the games I don't like. But if you have any thoughts on Concordia or if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe and of course leave a comment.